What turns a simple possession of drugs into an intent to distribute case? Well, there can be different ways that this happens. The most common is when the officers feel like, or the government feels like it's such a high amount of drugs that it's more than his personal use. So they say that just the amount of drugs shows that this person must have had intent to distribute. Or they'll have some other evidence, such as packaging material. So a lot of little small packages, which the cocaine could possibly be divided up into amounts for sale. So small amounts, like under a gram for individual sale, or that there's some scales that are used to weigh the substance. So there might be some other evidence like that they find that they claim shows that the person had intent to distribute. Or it may be that they're using what we call snitch information, confidential informant, a CI. So quite often the officers have somebody that they've arrested for a drug charge, and they dangle the possibility of getting their case dismissed if they'll snitch for them. So, give us some information on some other people, and we'll possibly drop your case or not get you charged. So then the person says, well, Joe over here, he's selling drugs. So then they stop Joe and they find some drugs, and so then they charge him with intent to distribute based on that information. But that information may not ever come out in court, or they may not be able to use that confidential informant or that snitch, and that might get thrown out. So quite often they claim that they have evidence of intent to distribute, but they ultimately can't win on that issue. The government can hit you with intent to distribute even if they don't have proof that you ever sold to anybody. Now, sometimes they try to get somebody to sell to an undercover officer, and so that's their evidence of intent to distribute. But quite often, they don't have any evidence of that, so they just have a suspicion that because of the amount of drugs or because of something that they found with the drugs that the person had intent to distribute. But that doesn't mean they're going to win on that issue. So that's a case that can be successfully defended. Some of the tactics that can be used to defend an intent to distribute case include being able to show that the snitch that might have been used was paid for their testimony. So basically the situation where a person is being given something in exchange for their testimony. So the snitch is getting their case dropped in exchange for giving testimony against other people. Okay, so that testimony is suspect right there because they're being paid for it. Okay, and we can use that and show to the jury that they were being paid for their testimony, so you should be suspicious of that. So that might not be proof beyond a reasonable doubt of intent to distribute. Intent to distribute cases are certainly more serious than simple possession because just the intent to distribute raises that to a higher level offense. For instance, say if you have a possession of 1 to 4 grams of cocaine, then that's a third-degree felony. But if you have possession of 1 to 4 grams with intent to distribute, then that raises it to a second-degree felony with a much higher punishment range. So the intent to distribute makes a simple possession case more serious with a higher punishment range. You should always fight a case rather than just going in wanting to plead. Now, it may be ultimately that because of strong issues in your case that we're able to get a plea that is very favorable, reducing the charge to a lesser offense that can ultimately be expunged from your record. But it's always best to go in aggressively defending and fighting the case. Aggressively fighting a drug charge involves in thoroughly investigating the case, getting all the materials the prosecutor has, seeing if there's other records that we need to request or subpoena, carefully going over any search or arrest warrant affidavits, carefully reviewing the evidence that they have, carefully looking at the reason for a stop, a detention, or arrest, looking for ways to challenge the reasonable suspicion for the stop or detention, the probable cause for arrest, looking for ways to challenge any search, which there are quite often legal challenges for that. So there's many ways to successfully defend a drug charge. If you're facing an intent to distribute drug case, don't hesitate in getting good representation. Call the Medlin Law Firm.